Welcome to SLA Spotlight, the podcast of Stuart Leach Associates, the litigation and disputes communication specialists. I'm Malcolm Munro, a television journalist, and in this series I'll be talking to leaders, thinkers, pioneers across the worlds of law, business, sport, media, and much more. Today we have in the studio Sophie Belle. Welcome. Sophie is a transformational leader and founder of The Feminine Edge, a movement dedicated to helping people unlock their inner power and potential through what you might say is a rather unconventional and intuitive approach drawn from her own journey. Welcome, Sophie. Can you begin by telling me about this journey?
Yes, of course. And thank you for that lovely introduction. So my journey, unfortunately, is very similar to a lot of women who are very ambitious, who want to do it all and progress in their career, but also, enjoy life, enjoy family. And so I was in a place of real burnout. I'd lived in Singapore, burnt the candle at both ends, come back to start a business in the UK. That had been a really wonderful experience. And then things just stacked up. I had a young baby. I was pregnant. My mum was really ill. We had to be diplomatic, a misaligned investor in our business. And it pushed me to the absolute limit. And because I was pregnant, I was seeing midwives quite regularly, and I was having a lot of panic attacks and couldn't sleep. Just my mental and physical health was really declining, and I was told, very sensibly by midwives that I needed to, take some antidepressants and get some support. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to look at other options. So I listened to my mum, who was a yoga teacher, and decided to do breath work. And it changed everything for me. It really did. It's such an incredible tool. And I started doing very basic breath work, but it was so accessible because it was there all the time. So I was using it at night when I was awake, helping me get back to sleep. It was helping me stay calm in...
Okay, before we go any further, perhaps you could just explain what you mean by breath work.
Okay, breath work. So it's conscious breathing is essentially manipulating your breath and changing the pace, the depth, noticing where you're breathing, and slowing down your nervous system by using your breath or stimulating your breath to gain energy. For me in that situation, it was very much slowing it back down, coming back down to earth, finding my feet and connecting back to my body, because I was often in these problem loops in my head that I couldn't solve, and coming into my body with the breath is very much like meditation. It rewires your system, and it physically and physiologically calms you down.
Well, given that you were in this difficult place, and thanks for being so frank about that, you might have been tempted to say, you know what, although I am ambitious, it's not worth it. But you took an entirely different route where you're helping people to achieve what they want in terms of career or other life ambitions without having to rely on, if you like, antidepressants or other ways of managing those difficulties. So what made you decide that you still wanted to pursue a career even with these difficulties?
I always say that breathwork is like therapy without talking, because it takes you into an altered state of consciousness if you're doing a more immersive breathwork session. And by that I mean, especially if it's in a one-to-one situation, or if you've got music, or if you have some longer time to go into it, it takes you into a much deeper brainwave state where you can actually rewire your system. But what it also does is it unlocks a lot of memories, trauma. It's a type of somatic release. So to give you a bit more of an overview of that, imagine going to therapy and you understand everything, but you still get that trigger, you still get that stress, and you can't quite understand why. Breathwork can go into the body and actually unlock and release the tension that your cells are holding on to. And this goes back into generational trauma that it actually scientifically been proven to travel down in our DNA. So sometimes tensions will arise in you that you can't consciously put into words, but breathwork can access what's called your coex system, which is like your body's filing system of every memory that you've had, even though it's not in the conscious mind. So breathwork brings a lot to the forefront And as someone who feels passionate, wants to feel purposeful, and I mean, we're all wired to want more, aren't we? So I think it's quite hard if you are someone who's always been quite driven in their career to suddenly just completely take a backseat and not strive for more and want to create, want to inspire, but also you kind of have that door open to follow your intuition. And for me, it was definitely, people need this. This is amazing. And I felt at the time that there was only this kind of very spiritual side, which a lot of people wouldn't buy into, or this very functional side, which was
okay. So
very
you've
masculine.
taken this idea of calm and breathing in the right way, and drawn, as you say, originally from the principles of yoga and from meditation. But you've taken that into the world of business,
Yes.
and into the world of law and media, and through the platform or the movement, the feminine edge. Tell me about that leap, if you like, or step forward.
So when I started working with my network, doing breathwork, once I trained, I just saw how many people needed it, but what it was bringing to the surface. And how it's developed is that now the feminine edge is actually not only a movement and a community and a way of living, and something that lives in you, which is unique to every person, male or female or whichever gender. It's actually not gender specific, but it's also about living life on your terms. And what the feminine edge now represents as a methodology is rewiring your belief system, your subconscious system, so that it reflects what you want on the outside. And I think this is often people, whether it's through ego or purpose or a combination of both, they crave visibility. They crave validation, and they want to be acknowledged for what they're doing. They want to feel seen and heard. And I really believe that you can do whatever you want. You can be an ambitious lawyer and be heartfelt and vulnerable. You can be a really successful business owner impacting millions all over the globe and be a present mum. I really, really believe that. And I think that we are the creators of our lives. Whether you like it or not, you've created your life up until now, and you will continue to create. So why not take control of that and do it on your terms? And it's building that relationship with yourself first, because in order to be seen and heard and actually it feel good and not just want the next thing, you need to feel seen and heard by yourself. You need to understand yourself. And so many women are so disconnected. And I think, now I look back as well, and that was the problem, that it was the disconnection between who I was, what I thought I wanted, what I thought I needed to be, versus what do I actually want? Like, what do I stand for? Who am I? And I've been talking recently about the fact that I actually have to build in a stage of the work with the women I do of regret, because they think, I can't believe I feel like this, and I could have felt like this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And actually, you hear people who are really successful or even famous, top of their field, going, oh, I wish I'd enjoyed the journey. And this really is that way. And that's the first stage of work I do with my clients, is regulation and recalibration, actually finding your feet where you are. So many of the women I work with feel like they got where they are by accident, or, they kind of slipped through the back door and no one noticed. And they're like, oh, I've got this huge responsibility, but I feel like often imposter syndrome, which, is real, but also it's the fear of rejection.
Yes, I mean, you've mentioned at the start that the principles of this apply to men and to women, but, the name of your movement, and also I would imagine most of your clients are principally women, and that is your focus, is helping women overcome some of these hurdles through the kind of thinking and behaviours that you're talking about.
Yes.
Do you find that, from your experience with clients, that it's particularly tough for women to, be really successful in their careers by simply adopting, if you like, a sort of hard, ruthless, tough approach, which doesn't work for a lot of people?
No, because they're not actually being true to themselves. And the issue with going into a situation feeling like you've got your armor on, you're ready to fight, you need to stand up, you need to not care, it's exhausting. It really is. And it's not, everyone's different in their energy. So some people they thrive more in masculine. Some people thrive more in feminine. Actually, I think most people go through different flows in different parts of their life, different areas of their life, and different stages as well. But the issue with needing to be hard-nosed and fit into this kind of facade in a lot of ways is that you burn out or you don't like yourself. And if you can connect to who you are and come from a place of authenticity and, lower the volume of the inner judge, create more compassion, do some inner child work. I mean, I always resist saying that because it sounds like a cliche, but every single person is being driven by a story in their subconscious which started as a child. So whether you are, try not to give specific examples of people who don't work with me, but for example, I can really easily see when someone is trying to prove something to their dad. And that's why they are so driven. They're creating a toxic work environment in their business. And they are just hell-bent on success and numbers. And I think that is a wonderful thing. Success, when you're doing it from the right place, when you're driving impact and you feel good. And maybe it is that they do feel really good about their work, but somewhere along the way there's a disconnect, and that's why they're micromanaging everyone. They're creating a toxic work environment where nothing's ever enough because they're coming from a place of lack because they don't feel enough. They need this to feel validation. Whereas when you are very grounded in yourself, you're present and you know yourself, you trust yourself, you have such conviction. You're so much more magnetic as a leader. You have people who hang on your every word, who want to come and work with you, who want to be part of your business, take this movement with you. And
well, that's interesting because, business can be tough.
Yes.
You have to squeeze budgets sometimes. You may need to make redundancies at some time. You may have to, I don't like the phrase, manage somebody out of the business. And all of those kind of things require, a certain thick skin, should we say, or armor. But what you're saying is you can dismantle that armor. You can take it down. You can be true to yourself and your principles, in some cases, feminine principles, and you can still succeed. But isn't the tough side of it, to a degree, inevitable?
I mean, challenges in life and business are inevitable. That's what happens. That's what helps us grow. That's what being human is. It's not about feeling positive and calm 24/7. I have my moments, trust me. And it's about understanding yourself and coming at a situation, a business with an open heart, but boundaries. And I think this is the balance. It's not coming into a situation where you have to make someone redundant and crying because you feel so bad. It's actually about acknowledging this is hard, this is heavy, I feel really guilty. But coming into a situation and understanding what the bigger picture is. And also not having to take responsibility for everyone as well. I think women in particular, a lot of the women that I work with, when they've been in those kind of situations with staffing and teams, they hold so much guilt and it just builds resentment. So as easy as it is for me to say, don't feel guilty, it's actually looking at why are you holding so much responsibility over that person? Like, what is the insecurity in you or the fear in you that you are doing that? Because so many people say being made redundant was one of the best things that could have ever happened to them because they've gone on and done something else. And you don't have to constantly have this narrative of justifying it, but looking on the flip side of this is what I'm doing. I'm growing this business from here to here. This is my purpose. This is my goal. And someone isn't in integrity with that. Maybe they don't share the same values as you. Maybe it just is a situation that the skill set just isn't a match. I think coming at that situation with an open heart and holding and regulating yourself. There's an exercise I always talk to my clients about, and it's so simple, but it's actually attention on you first, but expanding that to the person that you're with. And you can really see it when you start noticing this balance of where and with women, often the attention is on you. Like, oh, what are you going to say next, Malcolm? Does he like my answer? Or he looked over there. Is this boring? Or too much on me. I'm just talking away and have no concept of what you actually might want to get from the conversation, or, what we're doing together here, because it's so much on me and my story. So having that balance is really important. And,
but what about the potential downside? Because you're talking about being true to yourself
Yes.
and being comfortable with what you believe and not
Yeah.
compromising. But what about the perceptions of others?
Yeah.
In the some of the fields that we work in law, for example, and business, these are tough environments. Still, despite progress, quite strongly male orientated.
Mm-hmm.
What if all the things that you say are perceived as weakness, as perceived as flaws, that you haven't got what it takes?
Well, I think if you're in a business that thinks that, I don't think that business is right for you. I think that I see it a lot actually in clients where there is a conflict. Maybe their boss is putting stuff on them, or is maybe a bit more aggressive with their tone, and they look in themselves first. This is actually exactly the situation that happened to me with the investor in our business. He was constantly telling me I needed to toughen up. He told me I had anxiety every day. He told me, I won't even go down that road actually. I'll take a whole podcast. But he was so rude to me. And I am now in a place where I just think I have complete empathy and compassion for that man. I don't want to work with him again. I don't want to be involved in his business or anything. I actually have respect for his journey and, how he grew his business. I do not respect the way he does business. I don't respect the way he treats people. That's out of integrity with my values. And I think that if you're in a situation where that is very misaligned with you and you're being perceived in a certain way, that isn't actually on you. You're always going to be perceived in a certain way. People are always making judgments of each other. It's a primal thing. But if you're being yourself and that's not in line with that business, then I would argue that that isn't the right environment for you to thrive. And I think we forget about thriving. I do understand that with law, there is a rule book, but it's also about interpretation, and it still is about your belief system. And if you're going into work every day and you're not being yourself, you're doing yourself such a disservice. And I think that you can interpret the law, interpret success in your way, and that's your choice. And if you want to stay in a place where you think I have to be tough to survive, that's your choice. I think that we have to own the fact that we can create the life that we want, and that.
Yeah, I painted a sort of slightly bleak picture of an environment where all these sort of alpha males are giving you a hard time. But there is, of course, very, very significant progress in this area. Absolutely. In my own area of the media and television, that I've seen real changes. And a lot of very senior positions now are held by marvellous women, some of whom I've worked with. So let's look at the other side of the coin where progress is being made. Yes. Are you seeing that? Are you playing your part in contributing to it, would you say?
I hope so. Yeah. This is what I feel really passionate about, is I have seen women flip between what I call the passive feminine, which is that kind of victimhood, blaming everyone else, maybe even a bit of manipulation, that kind of falling on the floor, like nothing's working for me, everything's against me, versus the disempowered masculine, which is that competition, aggression. It's that flip-flop. Whereas when you can find that balance, even in tough situations, and I have got clients who have been in situations that are really challenging, where maybe there's been a change, or there's been, a board member who has had a different set of values, trying to be diplomatic. And my clients, it's been a big thing that we've worked on together, actually. So you really believe in what the business does, but you do not believe that this individual is being, acting in integrity with the values even of the business and how you will work. So in that situation, first of all, it's the inner work. It's understanding, why are you always triggered? Did that happen? Has that happened all the way through your life? Is it your story that is actually the most painful thing here, which it often is? And this was my experience as well with the investor. First, I looked inward and I thought, okay, well, why am I so upset? Why can't I switch off at the weekend? Why will I run to answer his call even though I'm with my baby? That isn't right. So I looked at myself, and it's the same work I do with my clients. It's looking at, like, what is that very vulnerable feeling, that rawness that's been triggered, that's sending you into either spiraling thoughts and even depression, or anger and the need to fight back and prove yourself and, be aggressive back. And I think if you can... So with this client I've got in mind that I'm giving you the example of, she has been able to regulate herself in situations. She's understands her needs. She's put distance between her and this person. She's used her support system within the business to, make sure that she does have that support. But she is very grounded in who she is as a leader. And since she's been in this place, let's say, within herself, not only does she feel good, she's used the words liberated, enlightened. She really feels that human experience for her is a wonderful place.
So how does it work? You talk about the clients, and you're giving me an
Yeah.
example, obviously respecting confidentiality.
Yeah.
But do you typically, would a client come to you and say, I need some help? How does it work?
Yes. So I have a lot of clients who come through word of mouth. Typically, I have women who are kind of wanting more than, they've got all the tick box things, but they're not feeling purposeful or present with their family. So in this example of my client, one of the most wonderful things that she experienced was that her family commented on how happy she seemed. She was so present at Christmas, on holidays. And that for her was living. She had the job stuff nailed, and she felt much better in that, and very sure, convicted in who she was and what she was here to do. But yeah, so she came knowing there's something in me here that I need to look at. And she understood that my work was about creating an inner world that reflects what you want on the outside, and doing the subconscious reprogramming, understanding the stories. And the way that I've trained, I did the 400-hour trauma-informed breathwork. So that's how I can hold that space for big things that come up. I'm not a therapist, and I would always recommend someone go to therapy before they come to see me, because this is about moving forward from those things. But it's women-centered coaching. It's understanding, why do you keep going into this cycle of suffering? Is it because it makes you feel more connected with people? Is it because you get that validation when people come around you? Is it that then you can blame that person? And the shame as well. Women shame themselves so much. It's 80%, I think, of women and girls will go to shame as a way of internalizing an outcome. Whether it's a maths test at school or someone in their family getting sick, they will think they could have done more and internalize that feeling of shame.
You say that feminine edge isn't just for women.
Yeah.
It could work for men as well. So can anyone, regardless of gender, tap into this energy? And have you encountered men who are willing, if you like, to open themselves up to this kind of thinking?
Yes, I have. Even my husband is coming around, and he is the biggest skeptic of them all. I think on the flip side of, looking at what's beneath the surface and the reprogramming and then in the inner work is huge potential and limitless opportunity. And I think when we can tap into our intuition as a tool, intuition is not only that more spiritual inner wisdom, and some people go further and they will channel God or whatever their spiritual beliefs are, but it's also all your experiences that have come forward, and looking at, what is that thing that I really want? Why do I want that? Actually, I don't really need to explain. I love money. I want some more money, and I do good with money. So I do want to go after that big thing, or I want to charge more. I want to get paid better. Or actually, I'm so obsessed with, my business or how I protect whatever it is in law that you're doing, how do you create innovation and creativity, and how do you really stand up and lead people and create the change that you want to see in the world? Because everyone wants to see some change, even if it's small. And I think another thing, because we're talking about generalizing, is we always think we're on this path, I do this, then that. And I noticed this massively in the food industry. In my last business, you get into Whole Foods, then you get into Waitrose, then you get into the bigger, and then you go global. And I had a conversation with someone recently, and he was talking about this and desperate to get into Tesco. And I was like, but is that your dream? Is that really what you dream of? I know everyone wants it. We wanted it, so I get it. But when you think about how exciting it could be to be in your business, like the limitless possibilities, is it that like you walk into Tesco or you get it in your Whoosh order? Or is it that everyone at your favourite festival is drinking it? It's thinking beyond what you've been told, really. And I think for everyone, if we can own that a little bit more, it's more fun, first of all. And I think let's not ignore that like life should feel fun a lot. We often put down suppressed joy, thinking, no, we need to be serious. We need to get from X to Y.
Can I ask you about another area of business, which is fairly typical in the world of business, and that is, we know there's a gender gap. A lot's been done to try and narrow it, but it still exists. And we know that there are disputes and rows within businesses. How does what you're proposing and saying fit into the sort of principle of banging on the boss's desk and asking for a pay rise, which I think most people are quite reluctant to do, but I would think women particularly.
Yeah, this is still a big thing that women find really, really hard. And it's a conversation that I always bring up with my clients. And I've been in corporates and had this conversation with groups of board members, female board members. And slowly but surely, there are things in place that make sure that things are more visible. It's being talked about. Women are getting rewarded in the way that they should. But I think there's an opportunity to think of things differently and not needing to bang, but actually tell them and say, this is what I want and this is why, and not have to justify every little thing. And it comes back to a lot of the inner stories that we hold in our subconscious. For women, the three main ones are: I'm not enough, I'm alone, and I'm invisible. And with pay rises and things, I'm not enough comes up a lot, that being the main story. But that connected to money mindset. Money mindset is huge. Money's such an emotional topic, actually. It's amazing what comes up when you talk about money in more depth. But yeah, if we're talking financially about that gender gap, then I would really urge people to look at their money mindset and think, why do you think it's not possible for you? Why can't you go and have a conversation? Why does it have to be a fight? Why can't it be an open and honest, I deserve this? And a two-way conversation as well, not just a presentation and a pitch, but actually, well, what do you think? Why do you not think I deserve that? Let's come together and actually talk about this, and it can be interesting as well. It can be fascinating.
All that you've said makes a lot of sense in terms of personal growth and development and success in business as individuals.
Yes.
Do you think that the principles that you're talking about actually make up for a better business anyway? So not just for the individual, but the business itself will benefit from having people adopt the principles that you're adopting within their team.
100%. I think that what I see, because a lot of the women I work with are leaders, it ripples down. It really does. I think when people have permission to be themselves, they're a lot more creative. Creativity and innovation is what businesses need. They need people to feel energized by their work. They need people to feel safe in their work, safe to have a conversation about money, safe to say, my child's sick, I need to go and be at home with them, safe to say, I need a bit more support. Whereas we're kind of suppressing all these things. But if people can be open, and I do understand there's boundaries, and I've run teams myself, I do get it. I know that it's easy to say and things are harder to put into practice. But I think if you can set the tone of your culture and your values and you act with integrity in terms of you do that for yourself as well. So as the boss, when your child's sick, you're honest with your team. I think that people thrive and are much more loyal. And I think that's, retaining staff and staff turnover it's a big indicator of the success of a business. Really, it is. And if we can be creative in ourselves in business, I mean, we've got, it's another conversation with AI, but a lot of things are being replaced. But if you can't replace that human connection, that the way that people's minds can kind of go off in 1,000 directions and come back and get excited, it's the felt experience. And yes, that is very personal to the individual. If a company can be led like that and their staff feel like that, that ripples into their customers as well. I mean, I know that there are law firms who maybe are more human in terms of they're not as armored, they're softer in their approach, let's just say. Softening is a big thing I talk about, so I'm not afraid to use that word in that sense. But when something's more of an open and honest conversation with professional boundaries and with the rule book that can be interpreted, then that makes for a much happier experience, doesn't it? It makes you want to go and do business with that person, that team again. And so from a strategic perspective, it is so valuable. I mean, when people have staff burning out left, right and centre, it's very expensive. But if they're investing in doing things differently, pulling out intuition, making sure people are compassionate, then that creates a happier and more productive workforce. Because I mean, I work with companies and their top thing is that they have to meet deadlines.
So just finishing up, let's look ahead to the landscape. You have a front row seat, if you like, of what's going on in some businesses in these issues. Where do you see things going? Are you encouraged by trends? Are you encouraged by changing attitudes to some of the, if you like, the softer qualities that you're talking about? Or are you still enormously frustrated by it all?
Well, I mean, things are changing. They are changing. And I think it's the main things that I'm seeing. I would say the two key things that are so important are intuition-led strategy and authenticity in leadership. And I think both of those things are underpinned by people adopting a belief system that actually works, that's not because someone else said it and that's how it's always been done. I think that the opportunity for those leaders and those businesses are going to be bigger because things are automated now. There's a lot that we can rely on AI for. But if someone's purpose, the impact and the way that they're doing business speaks louder than those automations, those apps we can use, I know that's generalizing quite a lot, then as humans, because I touched on it, but really being human is an experience of how you're feeling right now, isn't it? And that's really, really important. And intuition can't be trumped. Intuition being what you feel in your gut, yes, but also the senses, the way that you are tuned into other people, the way you're able to connect, the way that you're able to draw on all your life experiences and your knowledge. That is going to be so powerful in standing out in a more AI-led world as we go, as things grow.
Yes, I can see when AI has a bigger impact on our lives, as we're seeing already, then the human principles will become even more important. Sophie Belle, founder of The Feminine Edge, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to SLA Spotlight and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.